it gave my word more weight with my family, for sure.
Yeah, of course.
Didn't always make them feel the best.
Yeah. Welcome to the Savage Servant Podcast. My name is Nick.
My name is Jason.
And today we're going to go over a book that I'm currently reading, well, a set of 3, and Jason has read in the past. It's called The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. Buy this on Amazon. Has 2 other books along with it, The Voice of Knowledge and The Mastery of Love, which I have yet to read these 2. A gentleman that we had on the podcast a couple weeks ago had mentioned The 4 Agreements. Jay, yeah.
Gerillo? God, I can't say his name.
Can't say his name, though.
No.
Good dude. Mentioned this book, and he also mentioned another book which I bought, The Daily Stoic, which I'll talk about later, but it's a good book too. You should get that one. So we're going to go over the 4 points, and then we're just going to talk about them individually. The first point is be impeccable with your word. Now, these are kind of just basic, but they're very meaningful if you think about them as we discuss them. Don't take anything personally. Don't make assumptions, and always do your best. So when you hear someone say, like, you got to be impeccable with your word, what does that mean to you?
So for me, the part of being impeccable with my word that I struggled with when I read this book was being honest with those around me, being honest with everyone around me, but the part that was hard was being honest in a way with my family and friends, people that were closer to me, that I felt like my honesty was somehow going to upset them or somehow going to strain the relationship.
Yeah.
I think that comes from, I'm pretty blunt most of the time.
Oh, I know.
And so I think because of that, I had issues with family members so many times that over time I just kind of didn't bring up what I thought of things, didn't share my opinion as much, or just tried to like my girls, I try to make them happy, right? So they ask me what I want for dinner and I know what they want, and so I'm just like, oh, that sounds good, and it makes them happy, so I'm like, I don't care, right? And so at some point though, I realized I wasn't giving my real opinion about anything with them that I felt like was going to put a strain on things, and that itself put a strain on things because it made me less happy, and they unconsciously took weight off of my word, because people know when you're not being genuine all the time, or when you're not being 100% truthful. So I think so what I did was I went back and basically tried to just overcompensate to completely knock things the other way and get back to being able to have the practice of being 100% honest with my feedback. And so for 3 months, anytime anybody asked me for any feedback, I was 100% honest, no tact, no filter, no anything. But
go over like a fart in an elevator.
Well, it wasn't.
That's not starting off well.
No, but it gave me the ability to realize where the real problems would be, and it gave my word more weight with my family, for sure.
Yeah, of course.
Didn't always make them feel the best.
Yeah.
And then over time I went back and realized, okay, I can pull back a little bit with this, and this is where I need to be more transparent. And there's always a better way to say things, but I think you have to figure out how to say things first and then learn how to say them.
Yeah, you have to sketch it out in your head as to how it's going to come out of my mouth, because a lot of the times what you're trying to relay does not get taken, what you're trying to say.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and so, but if you're impeccable with your word and you're intentional about what you're going to say, your word has more weight. The people that you lead and the people around you, they'll actually, when they do want honest feedback, it makes your word carry more weight, and you have the ability to be the person that people can go to then when they need real feedback, when they need real honest answers, because they know that you're going to give it to them. When you're a people pleaser, other people know that. They know when you're not being 100% honest. They can feel it, right? Yeah. They might not know what they feel, but they're like, they're going to go to somebody else though, because there's some people in this world that really are intentional with their words, but you know that they're being 100% honest with you.
Yeah.
And when you encounter those people, And there's something about the way that they speak. It's more captivating. It has more, I keep saying weight, but that's what it is. It's like that person could say 4 words and it mean more than someone else that says 100, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what I was trying to get to. I'm still, working on things like that and being more intentional the way that I speak, my vocabulary, things like that. But being honest, and giving my real feedback for things, I think has been a real benefit for me.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. For me, it's been, for the longest time, I still have this bad habit, and my significant other will tell you, she many a time said to me that, when I get into talking about something, I'm just standing on a soapbox, and I'm like, it comes off very preachy, disingenuine, and everybody just stops listening, and it's like you're just talking to hear yourself talking away, but inside you feel like you're relaying a message. But to be impeccable with your word, I think, like you said, is definitely being honest. You have to be tactful, kind of eloquent with what you're saying, because like you said, now I have said this phrase, but I don't believe it, because it mentions hell and whatnot, but it gets the point across. The definition of tact is telling somebody to go to hell where they look forward to the journey. And that kind of makes sense, and that was explained to me once that way, and how to say things that people may not want to hear, and a lot of times people don't want to hear your honest opinion, but like you said, the weight of what you're saying when it comes to what they're in alignment with, like if they come to you and they have a decision in their mind about something already, and they ask you your honest opinion, in your head, you're like going, just like you said, am I going to, be a people pleaser and agree with this person, just be like, okay, you don't want to hurt their feelings, or am I just going to be like, look, this is the way I think about it, and this is why. And when they come to you and you actually agree with what they're saying, and they know you're intentional, and they know that you have integrity behind what you're saying, they take that, like you said, so much more. Those 4 words can mean more than 200 to 300 coming out of someone else's mouth. So that's a huge thing.
And sometimes people don't want real feedback, and you learn that too. Yeah. But those people, if they don't want real feedback and they come to you and ask you for real feedback, but you give it to them, they can be upset.
Well, they get butthurt.
But those are the people that they're not going to take what you say serious unless you agree with them, no matter what.
Now, let me ask you a question. Has that ever happened to you?
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah, somebody come up to you and be like, you ask somebody, hey, what's your opinion on this? And they just crap on it, and you're like, oh, that's
so
that's kind of not why I came to you.
And I found myself getting disappointed at things like that.
Yeah.
I'm better at it now, but one of the things that you have to realize, and this is one of the things that I've tried to remember every time, is, okay, I ask them for this reason. Like, what's the reason for this question, right?
Yeah.
And not just asking questions to ask questions, or asking questions, like, tell me I'm pretty. Like, that's not the fucking point. Like, I am literally asking you because I want to know what you think so that I can get better. Like, you're asking people for their opinion about something is meant... If you're doing it for genuine reasons, you're trying to get feedback, and feedback is only as useful as the person that's going to implement it to make things better. And sometimes you ask somebody for feedback and you may not agree with what they have to say, but at the very least, you have the ability to look and say, okay, that person, based on these things, this is what they think of that. So at least I have a better understanding of people coming from this context.
Yeah.
Like, when we started showing people some of the content for this podcast, some people didn't think it was what they would want to watch. Some people thought that it was something that was awesome. And although we're going to be ourselves no matter what, knowing that certain people didn't buy into it or didn't enjoy like our discussions or our interactions or the way that I talk and run my mouth, like, that's fine. That just tells me, though, in that context, those people aren't the people that I'm going to go to next in order to try to get better at this, because what we're doing is, like, as long as we're being ourselves, and as long as we're being authentic and we're being honest, I think that some people aren't going to like us. Like, and that's with everything, right?
I don't need the accolades of, tons of people. I would like it personally to where the people that I love and care about, give me their, constructive criticism. But at the same time, when you give that constructive criticism to somebody, try to say something positive as well. Because a lot of times when we go to the people that we trust and love most for their opinion, and they're going to give it to you straight out, they're just listening off a bunch of negative things, which is fine. Say the negative things. Those are good because that's going to help us grow, develop, and do stuff. That's how you grow. But at the same time, to just leave it at that and to make it feel like there's just like this disgust about what you're doing or what you're talking about or your content or you're supposed to be this and you're supposed to be that. It's just like, we're Christian men, but we're going to sin every single day. Every person sins every single day. And if you're looking at yourself in the mirror right now and saying like, oh, but I'm a good man, I'm a good woman, I'm a good this, you are, and I'm sure you're doing the best. Continue to. As we grow individually, so should you. But at the same time, to lie to you and say that Jason and I don't cuss, or that we're not cracking jokes, or that we're not being ourselves, you're not going to listen to anything we have to say, nor are you going to relate to it. I wouldn't. If I was just sitting here reading off stuff with a flat affect, just looking at the camera and being like, this is my experience, it was really bad, I'd be like, click, next.
Well, that's the problem with a lot of old Christian programming. I feel like there was a lot of old Christian movies.
Oh, dude, that's like
and
Catholic,
TV
100%.
And different things like that, and they all did poorly because you could tell they weren't being authentic. They weren't themselves. And it came off preachy. So I think that's a huge part of being impeccable with your word. It makes your word actually mean something, right?
Yeah. So the next one, don't take anything personally. Now, this is a big one because a lot of things go into that, and it talks in the book about only taking what you feel you are in the mirror at face value and knowing that deep down you're a better person. But the thing that you show to other people oftentimes is criticized, is neglected, is looked over, hurt, whatever the case may be. And a lot of times this more has to do with them than it does about you. But when we're in that moment and we feel like we're already judging ourselves on something and then somebody else we feel is doing the same thing, we go from here to like through the floor.
That's the thing that we talked about with Jay was seeing someone in their worst situation and then judging them and the way that they treat you in that situation, like that's who that person is. Yeah, that's been really hard for me, especially in the emergency fields that we work in, right? Like we see people in poor situations, but it goes even as far as like your spouse, right? Like if they had a really bad day and they come home and they treat you like crap, sometimes like it's extremely hard to not just think that, well, like, oh, what did I do? But no, it's like they had 4 customers at the end of the day yell at them for something stupid. Yeah. Or, whatever they do. Like they had a bad day and then they come home and although they shouldn't take those things out on you, still have the responsibility of the only thing that you can control is the way that you react to those things. And so that is hard for me. That's hard for me to not take personal, but it's always been a good reminder and something that I try to remember at the end of the day. Like, okay, why is this person acting like this? Like, did I do it or did I not?
And I think as men, we're problem solvers. We want to solve problems. That's what we're designed, like that's like in us to do. If there's a problem, let's do this, and try to fix it. I mean, we don't always do it the best within ourselves, but trust me, when it comes,
most of the time we don't.
Yeah, but when it comes to other things, like if something needs to be fixed, in a relationship, around the house, whatever it is, like we have an opinion about it. We have a way to get around to that thing to make it, better. But like you said, especially in relationships, we have that need to like, what can I do to make this better right now? How can I, babe, what do you need? You come home and, can I get you something or what do you need? Or you're talking to them on the way and you just hear it in their voice. You're like, man. And you're almost kind of bracing for impact because like, what's coming through the door and you really don't want it to be that way. So you try to put your best foot forward so that hopefully it's not. But then that's what this is. You're taking it personally. You're making it, is this a me problem or is it a them problem?
Yeah, and when I've done that versus when I haven't, when I've been, that's a good point, like bracing for impact, you're like tensing up.
Oh, the whole time.
And then it makes things worse.
We had this conversation in the car that when things are off, and I'm sure this goes for you too, when things are off, like in our relationships, like nothing feels right. Like food tastes different. Like it just, nothing seems to feel the way as it should, as it does on the days that you're just getting along, communicating well, you know, took a compliment well, or went out of your way to do something for the other person, and it was met with, you know, appreciation and love, and, you know, all the things that you're trying to give that person. And that's a big one.
Yeah. So what is don't make assumptions? What do you think about that?
Well, that kind of ties into what we were talking about. Like we constantly make assumptions about ourselves, about what we think the other person is thinking about us. That's something that I think runs through a lot of people's heads. Like we're constantly trying to interpret what the other person is thinking about how they're viewing what we said, what we did, whether or not, you know, they're want to be close to us, you know, just trying to figure out, you know, try to be a mind reader. And that will drive you absolutely insane. You will spend so much time and energy, you know, thinking about what's coming. What am I not doing right? You know, is she acting this way because I did this? Or did this happen? And then that can lead, I mean, this can take you down an ugly path, which the book doesn't talk about, but it could lead to like trust issues, not trusting the person that you're with, and realizing that that lack of trust is coming from you, not them. Like, well, that doesn't make sense, but it does. Because you're saying you trust that person. If that person is not saying or doing anything to make you not trust them, no matter if they've sinned in the past and they're not that person anymore and they're doing their best to try and be this person, then it's like them trying to climb the side of a mountain and you're at the bottom throwing rocks at them hoping they fall. And when they fall, I'll be like, told you so. Like, you're part of the problem too. Like, in a relationship, if you guys are both in a boat, no matter who drills the hole in the bottom of the boat, you guys are both agreeing to be in the boat. So that hole is both of your problem. It's not just one. It's not like, well, you drilled it. Because let me tell you what, if you're out in the middle of the ocean and that bitch goes down, you're both drowning. So it doesn't really matter. So you're both responsible for fixing that hole.
So that's the way that
and that's how I feel about don't make assumptions.
I took that in a completely different direction, but I think that's valid.
I felt it, so I had to say it, you know.
In my head, it's similar. It's not about like what they're thinking about you, but the way that they are viewing something. Yeah. Like everybody views things different, right? Like, of course. Like you, with the things that have happened to you in the past, in your experience, you see the same situation a different way than I do, right? That's why, like, when we talk about, like, different things, right? All sorts of things me and you have disagreements on. But
and I'm usually right, so it don't matter.
Sure. So when those things happen, though, with anyone, it's your partner included, you looking at the same thing and assuming that they are reacting because of something specific, they're probably not. Like almost, especially in your relationships, because men and women are so different, right? Like,
they are.
Almost 90% of the time, if I go about something and I think, okay, like it just first turnkey, like what do I think? Why is she upset? Because of like a specific situation, It's almost never why she's upset, right? Because I'm thinking, okay, why would I be upset?
Yeah.
But if I think, okay, no, really though, why is she upset? Oh, like she thinks this way, so this is why she's upset. Or like your boss, like why is he upset about something? Is it because you did this, or is it because something completely different that's going on contextually in the company, right? Like you have to understand the way that somebody else views things, and that is the assumption piece for me, is like being able to look at things with empathy and being able to look at things from someone else's shoes. And that's what I remember. That's what I remember from the book, was that it's everybody has their own way of looking at the same situation, and if you can't see the way the other person's looking at the situation, you can't effectively deal with them or lead them or get them to another alternative view, because you have to know where you're starting.
Yeah.
Okay, so the other one is always do your best. I feel like this is the most bland statement.
Oh, when I read this part of the book, I'm not gonna lie, I was like,
Like
it's just generic and cliche. Like, always do your best. You feel like, you're on a little league team, your dad's hitting you upside the head, like, do your best, son. And you're running out there and you strike out, and it's like, loser.
Sometimes your best isn't the best.
It is, but in that moment, I mean, that it transcends across your life.
It's effort, right?
It's just effort. That's all it is. It's just it kind of talks about from the point of like you have to put yourself to the side. If you know why you're doing something and whatever it is, like it's saying how you do one thing is kind of how you do everything. That's kind of true to a point, but you just want to be the best version of yourself in the most situations you can be.
Bring the highest standard into your life across the board.
Yeah. But what do you think the biggest part about trying to always be your best is? Like, what do you think, like, is the key thing? Like, if you didn't do this one thing, that could never happen.
For me, it's at the end of the day, knowing that I did everything that I could do. Mm-hmm. So me and my daughter were just talking about this a couple of days ago because she's having some struggles in school. And she was wondering if it was the way that some of the questions were, the way that some of the program was. If she's like, I don't know, maybe I'm just not. Maybe they're asking things in a weird way. Maybe they're expecting too much out of this situation, right? And the way I explained it was, the only way you know for sure if it's you or them, or you or the situation, right?
Yeah.
Is if you do everything you possibly can do, and at the end of that, if you do everything you could possibly do, then at the end of the day, it wasn't on you, right?
Yeah.
Like, you can go to bed with a clean conscience. Whether that's a relationship or not, right? Like, sometimes I had a buddy ask me a few months ago, like, okay, how do I know if this relationship, like, we're struggling really, really bad, like their marriage is on the rocks, and he's trying to figure out, do I like, is this God's way of telling me that this isn't the right thing for me? Like, I'm asking God to give me feedback.
Yeah.
And how do I know if he's saying this is, like, how do I know if I'm just not doing enough, or if it's God telling me, no, like, this is not meant for you, this is not what I meant for you, or this is unhealthy, right? Mm-hmm. And what I told him was, when you do everything you can possibly do to fix the relationship, and then no matter what, things won't get better, the person won't get down the path with you, things are still crazy, like, you have to get it to the point where you have no excuses of being able to think if that's not the only other option.
Yeah.
Like, take yourself out of that equation. If you can do everything to the best of your ability, then there's no question on whether it was you or something else. If you do everything you can possibly do, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you give all your effort, then you can't ask the question, did I just not try hard enough?
Yeah. So I have 3 points to make about this. To me, always doing your best. In order to always do your best, you have to have 2 things, and one's a belief. 1, accountability. You have to hold yourself accountable. 2, self-reflection. Because if you don't sit down with yourself and say, what am I doing wrong? Why isn't this working? Was that taken as I meant for it to be taken? Am I hurting someone's feelings? Am I not doing enough? If you don't have that gauge within yourself, you're not going to know whether or not you're doing your best. Because somebody could tell you, like, hey, you do this, this, and this, that's your best. I'm like, well, I don't know if that really applies. And the third is, nothing is impossible to God, period. So when it comes to relationship stuff, if you're married to that person, or you just know something down innately within you is telling you that is your person through good, bad, or otherwise, then nothing is impossible as long as you have the faith long enough to get through whatever storm it is you have to go through. Because in that storm, you're going to change. The relationship may change. The other person may change. But it's all a test, and that's consistent in the Bible. Trials and tribulations. You're always going to be tested. But if you don't get tested, how are you going to grow? Mm-hmm. If you don't test out of high school, how are you going to get into college and know anything else? Like, if you don't pass those hurdles, you're not going to be much of anything else. So when people say to me like, oh, this person, I don't know if I'm meant to be with them, this, that, and the other, like, okay, at the end of the day, are you doing everything you can? And that person normally will say, yes, but in the back end, probably no. And if they can ask their significant other, the same thing, yes, but they're probably not. So if you're not in the position to really do your best by accountability, self-reflection, and knowing nothing is impossible with God, that relationship is going to make it eventually. You just both have to keep going down that path. I mean, there was a meme that I had read about, like, being married, like, 80 years ago. Like, back in that day when something was broke, they fixed it instead of throwing it away. Like, I think a lot of people now, even though it seems impossible, but I tell myself this every day, nothing's impossible with God. Absolutely nothing. Like, I don't care what it is. Because if that love's there and the intention's there on one part or the other, you're going to get through it. And it's going to be what you want it to be. But a lot of people get down that road and they just don't see any, like, light at the end of the tunnel. But it's just like, walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil. So you're just standing there like, this is the worst feeling I've ever felt. I don't know if this is going to end. I don't know when it's going to end. I don't know how it's going to end. But you're not supposed to. You're supposed to just keep going and have faith in that. So if you have those things, you're sitting down every night with yourself and being like, look, was I the best version of myself today? Did I really mean to say that to that person? Did I really mean to eat that thing if I have a certain goal? What am I doing wrong that I could do better tomorrow? I even put notes in my phone. I set them next to my alarm. So when my alarm goes off, the first thing that I look at when I'm waking up is like, oh, I got to go to work or I got to go to the gym. I'm like, okay, I got to like think this or do that. And that helps.
It's got real relationship-y.
Dude, relationships are the biggest thing we have in our lives, from the way we get along with each other.
I know. I just
significant other, but that's what this is.
We pulled a lot.
This is like all encapsulating. Yeah. It talks about like the 4 agreements with yourself, but throughout the book, it talks about relating to other people the entire time. Mm-hmm. It's not like these are for you to sit in a room by yourself and be like, God, I'm so amazing. I love myself. I'm the best person ever. I talk to myself in the best way.
No, I see it. I think that the always do your best is bland enough to be all encapsulating, but I definitely...
you almost want to have it like the rainbow, like the more you know.
Oh, God.
With the star.
All right, well, so... Yeah. I'm glad Jay gave us this reminder. I'm glad that you picked up the book because I had actually forgotten about it. I think the... don't take anything personal and the impeccable with your word are things that when I learned the lessons, they stuck. But these like agreements as a whole is something that I haven't thought about in a while. So it's good to remind ourselves of these things. The biggest agreement, when you start reading the book, it talks about when you're first born and you're making agreements with yourself as the people around you, your parents, teachers, people that you look up to. As you're growing, you start to say like, this is how you do this, and this is acceptable, and this is not, and this is how things should be. Those are actually agreements within yourself that you're reinforcing based on people that above you that you look up to are telling you. So you kind of have to go through, and it talks about it. They're unintentional. Exactly. Right? And you have to like disconnect from those agreements and start reprogramming yourself. Be like, I didn't really agree with that when I was a kid, and it's kind of been what I grew up with, but I never really liked it. And you have to kind of unplug that one and plug a new one in. So that makes sense. Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, you glad you picked these up? Yeah, I'm going to read the other 2, and we'll talk about them. Like I said, The Voice of Knowledge and The Mastery of Love. So are we gonna have a book club? I don't know if we'll have a book club. I mean, I don't want to like Oprah it out. And you get a car, and you get a car. All right. Well, as we continue down this path, we'll bring up things that we think are useful. But I definitely appreciate you bringing this, and I appreciate Jay for bringing this up. Yeah, he was the one that sparked it all. So. Until next time, be a savage, be a servant.